started with Bill, and so I sort of overlapped and came in at the end, and we sort of met on the set, and we sort of had a psychic, wordless connection, like, how is it in there? And he was like, yeah, it was intense.
Yeah.
And then we talked a bit, but I think one of the wonderful conceits of Bill and Oren's script was that, to have two actors playing this guy sort of reflects that one actor couldn't really capture a whole human life. And by having two actors do it, we sort of are admitting that it's only going to be reflections or fractions of him.
I grew up a music fan and a Beach Boys fan. And then spontaneously, for some reason, about 10 years ago, I started getting into Pet Sounds very much more deeply than I had ever before. And it's weird because that's when the script kind of came around. There was another script that was floating around called Heroes and Villains. With all due respect, wasn't very good, but the idea was great. And we kind of said, if it doesn't work out, come back and we'll start over, which is what we did. And got Oren involved at that point.
I love playing real people. I think it's always fascinating. You get to sit with them, and there's your research. They're right in front of you. They get to tell you stories. We learned so much, especially from Melinda, and she's sort of the spokesperson for Brian Wilson at this point in his life, and just she's a treasure trove of information, and she's so sassy and interesting, and really, I think, saved Brian's life. So that was it for me. She really has an amazing soul.
I was a fan of the Beach Boys, particularly Pet Sounds, but the wonderful thing about reading the script was how much I didn't know about Brian Wilson, which I was surprised by, just because I felt like I knew the music. You would think you would know the story behind the man who made it. And I think that was the first truly exciting thing, not just even as an actor, but about the film. Like, okay, wow, this guy's been through it. He's got a story. And I think he's got a story that would move people and surprise people. And then I remember, and the script has an interesting construct, and I remember going to read it again, but I put on music while I listened to it, and the Pet Sounds and Smiles stuff. And I think from that, right at that moment, I started preparing for the part, essentially, and I don't even know if it was totally mine yet, but the music combined with the words and the images, it was just so exciting to get to jump in.
Yeah, I was, I think with Paul, like the Pet Sessions and Smile record, and there's these two albums that came out, which are the Pet Sounds Sessions and the Smile Sessions, where you can hear him. It's almost like if you heard Mozart trying to figure out, I guess Mozart just wrote everything down by hand and then people played it, but you can hear Brian creating and thinking, and you could really see his mind and his genius at work in those records. And those were, I just sort of immersed myself in that. They're incredible. You can hear him really pretty much precognitively imagining all the rest of pop music that happens for the next 30 years. From Sgt. Pepper's to anything you can think of, Brian was doing it first. And so we take for granted all that music that's in our DNA, like it's almost like these lullabies of our youth, but somebody did them first. And it was, a large part, it was Brian.
Well, Paul was cast first primarily because, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, the image of Brian Past, we call him Brian Past, in the 60s, is a little more, solid. Like, he looked like Brian Wilson, the kind of whole Beatles era thing and all that. So Paul was kind of an immediate choice. Brian, in later years, in the 80s, you look at pictures, and from 1 month to the next or 1 week to the next, you can look dramatically different. Like, so you were always, or it was hard for me to get a handle on, okay, which one are we going to go with, kind of. And then I saw or rewatched a documentary that Don did on Brian, and there's a shot right off the bat. I showed John initially, where you see it, and it looks, it's so much John. It just popped into my mind, and I thought this would be great to be able to have, a guy like this be able to try to play Brian and bring all that to that role. Melinda saw it first, and then Brian saw it and really liked it, and then they were there last night, which was a really special moment last night.
Yeah.
See them kind of support the film, but also see the kind of recognition that they got from the audience.
We were backstage and everybody was clapping and everything, and then all of a sudden they sort of were stood up, but then they weren't clapping for the screen, but then they turned around. We were like, oh yeah, and they were giving Brian and Melinda the standing O, which I thought was that was
really
really
beautiful.
special, kind of special moment.